Hi, my name's Sam and welcome to Carl's Performance Garage. On this episode of Carl's Performance Garage, we'll be prepping my girlfriend's WRX for the track. As well as the track prep, we have a roll cage to put in and some new brake pads. So let's get to it. Unfortunately, this video was filmed under a bit of a time crunch, so I didn't get to film absolutely everything that I do when I do a track day prep. But the things that I like to go through when I do a track day prep is fluids, making sure that all the fluids are topped up, or if they're old, replace them, and then looking for leaks, any sort of leaks that could especially start a fire, looking at the brakes, making sure that the brakes will last you the whole day, making sure all the bolts are tight, looking to see if your battery is nice and secure, and of course making sure your extinguisher is in date. When you go through scrutineering at a track, especially in Victoria, Australia, the main things that they do look for is your extinguisher, your battery, and just in general, safety. But if your car is considered roadworthy and safe to drive on the street, then generally it's also safe to drive on the track. So with those things in mind, let's get back to the video. The car was due for an oil change anyway, so it was a perfect time to change the oil and change the oil filter. I quickly went through the whole car and inspected all the fluids. The only fluid that needed a top up was just the power steering reservoir. Didn't need much, but I topped it up anyway. Next, we just emptied the catch can from the catch can drain just to make sure it was nice and empty, so there would be plenty of room for all the track day antics. So one thing I'm going to do to get this car a bit more track ready and to help with identifying any issues is I'm going to go through all the suspension components. I'm going to give them a quick tighten to make sure they're tight. Now I've got a paint marker and I'm going to mark a line on the bolt and on a different part of the suspension. So it means that I can see if that nut has loosened. So I'm going to do all the marks from the nut side because it's often the nut that's loose and not the bolt end. So it means that after the very first session of the day, I can quickly have a look to see if any of the bolts have loosened a little bit to make sure that the car is 100%. So I'm just going to go through. This is the control arm. That's nice and tight already. So I'm going to get my pen and just mark like that. So after the first session of each track day, can have a quick look underneath the car, make sure all the lines line up, and we'll know we're sweet. So I'm just going to go through the rest of the car. So the main things I'm going to look out for is things like all the sway bars, plus then all the control arms, especially all the rear arms in the rear. And pretty much anything that if it was to majorly fail, we can have a quick look and we'll know that that's a suspect. So one thing I did notice was right here there was a little bit of coolant, and looking up there's a small little path of coolant. Unfortunately you can't see it on camera, but there's a small path of coolant and it looks like it's coming from the top radiator hose. So let's double check and investigate that. So I can see a little bit of coolant on the timing belt cover, and I'm using my inspection mirror. I can see that's a little bit wet. So we'll give it a tighten and a clean, and we'll make sure to jot that down to have a quick inspection after the first session. There we are. That's a lot tighter now. So hopefully we should be all set. But because that one was loose, I'm going to quickly go through the others and give them a tighten. A quick tip to remove coolant stains is use Windex or like glass cleaner, because for some reason it breaks it down really easily and gets that disgusting white stain off. You don't even need too much scrubbing, just as much agitation as you can, and that should be set. Another thing that I noticed is you have this AVCS solenoid valve cover, and on this car it is leaking. So I'm going to jot that down, get the parts, and in the future we're going to replace that. It's not too bad for now, just everything there's dirty, and same on the other side. I'm pretty sure they're actually really hard to get to seal, and it probably would have been a good idea if I used some sealant, but I'll use some sealant next time. We also thought it was time to change the brake pads. The brake pads that were in the car beforehand were WinMax W1 pads, and we found that on the old Impreza RS that my girlfriend had, she went through them pretty easily in about 2 track days and a bit of daily driving. So because of that, this WRX also had some WinMax W1s, so we changed them out just to make sure that she had enough brake pads to last both the track days. I have a video on how to change your brake pads, so I won't go over too much information in this video, but the link is in the description, or you can click the title card that is in the video now. But here's just a quick little compilation of changing the brake pads. With changing the brake pads, we also decided to flush the brake fluid. Flushing the brake fluid for me is pretty easy because I have a pneumatic brake fluid bleeder, which uses suction to ensure that there's no air in the system. So one thing that you should always check before you go on a track day is to ensure your extinguisher is in date. So at the time of filming, this extinguisher was in date, but now of course it's not. One thing that I recommend you do is you write the expiry date clearly on the extinguisher. This means that A, you can quickly see at a glance if you need to replace it or not. This one will need replacing, but unfortunately the car is out of commission, but there will be videos on that soon. Plus, a lot of scrutineers at tracks, they'll often see that you've got this written down and they'll know that you've done this before, and they'll be able to quickly look at that date, and they'll usually just go off that date anyway, because there's no reason to lie about it, because it is a safety item. And recently, at one of those track days, one of my mates did have a fire in his engine bay, and luckily he could put it out with the extinguisher he had in his car. So you should really value the importance of having an extinguisher. And the best thing is, when they have run out of date, you can still use them for other things. What I like to do with all of my old fire extinguishers is I like to mount them in some places in the shed. Yes, I know ideally you would want an extinguisher that is in date, but hey, these were going to be thrown straight in the bin. They still have the right amount of pressure, and in an emergency, it's better to have something than nothing. To finish off the service, we just quickly pumped up the tyres to their normal road going PSI. We got the car out of the shed, ready to put the new roll cage in. Installing a roll cage is actually really easy. The only thing that is really annoying is the fact that you have to keep taking the cage in and out to make sure you can mark up all the holes, get them drilled, and finally put the roll cage in. One thing that will definitely help anyone installing a bolt-in roll cage to their Subaru is to jack the car up really high. It helps having the car jacked up really high because it means that you can bend and curve the roll cage inside the car, and it just makes it a lot easier to get the cage inside the car. Unfortunately, we don't have that much good footage of us putting the roll cage in because it started getting really dark. We had dinner in the meantime, and we had a few other things come up. So here's a quick video of the cage fully installed. So the cage is installed, and as mentioned, we don't have any footage of the final installation. But basically, once we put it in, we could easily mark where the holes go. We pulled the carpet up, of course. Once we did that, we could drill them, we could put it back in, bolt it, and what we actually did was, to make it easier, we made a template of the bottom of these mounting plates. We just made our cardboard so we could lay that bit of cardboard in here and get a pretty clean cut, and the carpet looks pretty fresh. Did have to cut a little bit further up here. Unfortunately, you can't see it with the light, but you can over there, just to get the cage in the right spot and to be able to have a socket reach down to get one of the bolts. To do the back mount here, uses these Allen bolts. Unfortunately, this one on the inside is a bit hard to access, so whatever size it is, I needed to chop it down so I could actually put it in there and tighten everything up. Because of my roll cage in my car, I had already modified an Allen key, but what I did was I have a box of old Allen keys that have just come with whatever, like TVs, any sort of like little sets, whatever. They come with so many items. I keep them all because whenever I need one, I can use it, I can modify it, and I don't care because most of the time it was free. Again, I didn't film an intro to this video because it kind of ended when it got really dark, but here's one now. I hope you've gained a bit more understanding of what I like to do when I prepare a car for the track. I know this video wasn't really too comprehensive, but these were just the main things that we needed to do to Miss EJ before the track, as everything else was kind of done before this actual kind of track day prep night. Definitely in the future, I will do a more comprehensive video of what I like to do to prepare the car for track. So stay tuned for that in the future. So thank you so much for watching my videos. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for the support so far. I really appreciate it. As always, if you've got any feedback, suggestions, or opinions, leave them down in the comments below. You can also follow me on Instagram at 07carves. Again, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep on learning.